Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Susan Moore. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at IIBA. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to join us to learn about conference networking. Maybe it's something you've done, maybe it's something you haven't done, maybe it's something you think you want to do more of. Well, we've got Rachel Drinkwater here to talk about that today. Let me give you a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rachel. First, we are recording today's session, and you will get a link to the recording and Rachel's slides in 24 hours after today's session. So don't worry, you will definitely get that. You are already chatting. We love it when you chat. We love to learn about where you are, what questions you have, and also sharing your experiences in chat. This is intended to be a little bit of a community, so keep doing that. We are going to take some questions at the end. We're going to try to have a little bit of a longer Ask Me Anything session, so you can use the Q&A box for that. And some of you have already found those reactions, so please use them. Rachel is able to see them. She is an improv actor, and so that's going to give her a little bit of the spirit of improv. Okay, so literally Rachel and I just met 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago. And so in addition to being a speaker and an improv actor, she's also an author. And I think she's probably going to tell us a little bit about a new book that she's got coming out. I am going to let Rachel do a little more of an introduction of herself. Rachel, take it away.
Thank you very much, Susan. And yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening for wherever you are in the world. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me this evening, or joining us this evening. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you about conference networking. And I've called it Conference Networking 101 because I am very much still learning how to get the most out of conference networking. And I'm going to share some of my experiences, but I'm going to sort of lay it out there. I certainly didn't used to be a fan of conference networking. And when I first wrote this presentation, I entitled it Fear and Loathing in Conference Networking. It's something I struggled with immensely. And over the years, I've really improved my networking. I've learned how to get the most out of it in a way that works for me. So I'm going to share some of those ideas, some of those tips with you this evening, this afternoon, this morning. Moving on, or I would be if my slide deck was working for me. There we go. So, to introduce a little bit more about myself, Susan's done a brilliant job, so not much more to cover. I'm a senior business analyst, and I have been for 23 years now, which was always a little bit alarming because I don't feel like I should be old enough to have been doing anything for that length of time, but I have. This year, I actually got to the finals of Business Analysis of the Year as well, which was a real achievement in my career, really, really great. But in addition to that, I'm a lecturer. So I love lecturing. I do guest lecturing, and I was a residential lecturer at the University of Coventry. I'm a writer, just published my first book this year, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. I'm a blogger, I'm an actor, and I'm a semi-professional comedian. So as Susan mentioned, I am part of an improvised comedy troupe, which means people pay us to make stuff up and play silly games on the spot, which is a pretty incredible way of spending our time. Managed to get up to Edinburgh Fringe this year as well, which for those of you that are not familiar, it's one of the biggest, the biggest comedy festival in Europe. So an absolute honour to have been able to perform there. So here's me in one of my more serious roles. That moustache was tickly, uncomfortable, got in my drinks, but I actually do miss it. And I felt very powerful when I had that moustache, so I miss it. But yeah, me and the government inspector playing the magistrate there. Those are my socials, so connect with me on LinkedIn. I love chatting with people on LinkedIn. I like meeting people at conferences that I've chatted at LinkedIn. I'll get to that in a little while. And I've got my own blog there as well, so do track me down. It's pretty easy to find. It's literally my name. I'm going to do a little shameless plug for my book. I mentioned I wrote a book earlier this year. So my book is basically about business analysis careers. It's about how to take that next step, how to navigate the whole journey, that process from the moment you wake up and go, think I need a new job, actually, all the way through to cracking a bottle of champagne or celebrating with friends at the end of that process, because you've got the job that you really want. So it takes you through that whole process. It's a series of checklists and advice. It uses a lot of business analysis models to sort of help coach yourself through that process as well. It is available through the British Computer Society, the BCS, to members only, I'm afraid. But it's a great organisation to be part of. It's not completely disconnected. I'm not just plugging my book, because in it I talk about the benefits of networking and how we can leverage those professional networks to find opportunities, to grow relationships, to maybe meet some hiring managers. And you never know who the person you meet at a conference or you connect with online could be the next person that offers you a position or an opportunity. Susan and I were talking just before before we started this afternoon or this morning. We were talking before we started this talk, and she mentioned that she had literally that situation. Got chatting to somebody, and eventually they became her employer. So you never know when those opportunities are going to come up. But yeah, little plug there for my book. I've heard it's really nice to read. It's kind of chatty. It's a bit like just having a conversation with me. So if you enjoy this talk, you'll probably enjoy the tone of the book as well. Oh, networking. Networking is a bit Marmite. It's a bit love it or hate it. But it's so valuable. It can be valuable to your professional development and for opening up opportunities in all areas of your life, not just professionally. It can really open doors for you. This is a message that has resounded throughout my career. But until a couple of years ago, I was pretty skeptical. I didn't really believe it. I definitely lived in the I hate networking camp. And this photo pretty much summed up my thoughts about networking. That expression, that was me. Whenever anyone mentioned networking, it just seemed fake. It felt awkward. I didn't want to just saunter up to a bunch of complete strangers and start talking. What if they didn't want me there? What if I had nothing intelligent to say? What if I was interrupting something? And it took me a long while to shift my mindset on that, and quite a lot of experimenting. This photo, that's me at the front there, with my hair looking really good, actually. I must show that to my hairdresser. I Googled BA conference, and this photo came up as one of the top hits. See, in this photo, my active avoidance of any kind of conversation. My head is buried in some paperwork, that furrowed brow that, yes, I'm concentrating here. I don't want to be disturbed. That closed body language, my shoulders are all hunched up. See how everyone else is chatting. This was me. This was absolutely me at a conference. Traditionally, I was the sort of person that saw this sort of schedule, networking break, and there'd be horror. I'd be so excited about the idea of going to a conference, and then I'd see that, and there's this dread, this impending sense of, how do I escape this? How do I get away from this forced socializing? And then I'd remember all that advice, career coaches, professional development gurus, line managers, motivational speakers, all saying you need to network. So I'd go to the conference. I'm like, yep, I'm going to embrace it. This is going to be the one. This year, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to network. And that would last right up to the point where there's a room full of people and I don't know where to start. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to talk to them about. So I'd just go to the coffee station and sip my coffee and read some literature and hope everyone would go away until the next session started. Maybe this sounds familiar to you, or maybe you're great at networking, but you're looking for some new ideas. So I'm going to share some of my experiences and how my attitude changed in that time when I started to really embrace networking. So it's about 2019, pre-pandemic. It's the last conference I went to. It was not the last conference I went to. I spoke at a conference 1 week before lockdown, which is terrifying now I come to think about it. The last before anything happened, conference I attended, 2019. And my attitude to networking changed. I attended the BA conference Europe, of which the IIBA is actually one of the sponsors. And despite my best intentions, by this point, I've been to conferences for a few years, and I had very little hope for my plans to successfully mingle. But this conference was different. I chatted to people in the networking breaks. I had fantastic conversations about absolutely everything, ranging from neuroscience to the best tea shops in London. I made some friends, genuine friends, and a number of really valuable connections from both the social and professional perspective. What's different? what had changed for me? Now, as we approach the festive season, it's the time of end of year awards, work parties, events, then New Year conference season. I'd really like to share some of those things that I've learned about networking over the last few years. I've gone from loathing it to making genuine friends, getting some brilliant opportunities, winning great prizes, that's a bonus, and actually really looking forward to networking breaks. I genuinely now like to go to conferences because I know I'm going to see people. Just before I start, I want to talk about introversion. Now, I know I'm teasing you here. It's been ages. I keep telling you I'm going to tell you my tips, but I just want to talk about introversion for a second. I'm an introvert, and that surprises most people. Anyone that's ever met me, I don't come across as an introvert. According to my previous line manager, I'm gregarious, outgoing, and energetic, which I am. I love public speaking and having an audience. So thanks, guys. I do improvised comedy, as I've mentioned. I'll stand up and I will make stuff up on the spot in front of quite sizable audiences. So I want to dispel a couple of misconceptions about introversion. So I searched Pexels, which is where I get all of these lovely images from, and I searched it for the word introvert, so I wanted a good image. And I got suggestions of shy, alone, lonely, isolated, and this photo of somebody who's attempting to be a sofa, I think. I can assure you, as an introvert, I've never tried to be a sofa. I've never tried to hide in furniture. It's a myth. It's a myth that introverts always like to sit alone in a corner with their own thoughts and avoiding other people. But what is true is that where extroverts gain their energy from other people and social interactions, introverts gain their energy internally. So lots of socializing and presenting and externally facing activities can take quite a lot of energy from introverts. And so they need to take time and space to reflect and recharge afterwards. So after an hour of gregariously engaging and participating in workshops and conference talks, I and my fellow introverts may well need a bit of time and space to reflect and regroup. And I think that's where some of that fear of networking breaks come from, because I might be looking forward to a break because I need a bit of a breather. And actually there's this pressure to make the most of that break, to network, to gain the value from it. And that can be really intense. A 2-3 day conference with 9 to 5 conference sessions and then any socializing in the evening. And suddenly your breaks are gobbled up as well. So if you're an introvert, understanding this can really help you plan your networking activities in such a way that you can gain the benefit of networking, but without completely draining that energy bar. Oh, love that little animation. So, how can we do it? Here are some ideas. So, tip number 1, make use of interactive activities. This is great if you're feeling a bit uncomfortable. You're new to a professional community, you've just walked into a room and you don't really know anybody. You don't really know how, it might be a new conference. You don't know how this conference works. So the first breakthrough for me when I went to this conference I spoke about in 2019, Business Analysis Europe Night 2019, it offered loads of activities in the breaks. There was a treasure hunt, a selfie zone, various welcoming membership stands run by organisations such as the IIBA. And these gave great, easy, ready-made situations just to go up and talk to people about a ready-made topic. Even if the conversation was as inane as, "Hi, I'm here for your treasure hunt QR code and could I have some of your chocolate, please?" Even those simple conversations, I felt involved, I felt engaged, I was part of the community. I'd already met somebody, even if I was just pinching their chocolate. But those little conversations, then later I might see that person and I recognise them and they might recognise me. So these activities provide a great warm-up. If you're feeling a little anxious about getting into proper conversations or more serious, deep conversations, or if you're new to that community or you're feeling a little bit like you're on the fringes, go up to those stands. They're designed for you to go and have a little chat. They're also, some of the conferences I've been to charge and chat. So they're great. Plug your phone in, let it charge, have a little chat with the people doing the same. Really informal, easy places to start having those conversations. I've also seen quite a few technology demos. That's brilliant. I drove a tractor. It was great. It was a tractor simulation. Absolutely brilliant experience. Just got chatting. And again, it's a ready-made topic to talk about. You can just talk about that experience. Then you might bump into someone else. Have you driven a tractor today? It's fantastic. Give it a go. did crash into a hay bale. Probably shouldn't try doing that in real life. That's my first tip. Second, be authentic. Find a friend. Just find one friend. And this is great if you, like me, have that sort of old conception that networking's a bit fake. For me, networking always conjured sort of images. Businessmen in shiny suits with perfectly coiffed hair, smiling at each other with fake smiles, very, very white teeth, and exchanging flashy business cards. I think I've watched American Psycho and Wolf of Wall Street a few too many times, but that was very much my association. I always thought it was so artificial, so fake. I've attended networking coaching where this is added to this conception. I've been advised to find the people in the room that are most useful, or don't waste time on someone if it becomes apparent they're not useful. I've been on the end of that. I've been receiving end of those sort of networking philosophies. I've been cut up halfway through a sentence. Presumably, I've been deemed to have no value to someone's professional goals. Now, whilst this approach is perhaps understandable if you're at one of those dedicated networking events, some of them have really hefty price tags. You might have a very set goal for your networking in that environment. Maybe you're seeking an investor or you're building a client base. I can understand it in those situations, but it feels very ruthless in a conference setting. And for me, that philosophy just doesn't align to my values. I'm a people person. If I click with someone, I just want to chat to them. And I may want to talk about the latest business analysis technique or digital trends or business challenges, but equally, I might want to talk about Terry Pratchett or board games or festivals or travel or something else, just human stuff. Either way, I'm not comfortable with effectively discarding somebody just because they can't give me a leg up in my career. Back in the day when liking Harry Potter was a little less controversial, I once spent an entire 2-day conference talking almost exclusively to someone during all of the breaks because we bonded over my Deathly Hallows earrings. And I relayed this conversation to my coach, and they said, well, I was doing networking wrong and wasted the opportunity. Just spent the whole conference with one person who didn't seem to have any business value to me. But it transpired that I ended up getting quite a lot of freelance writing work from my new friend. There was no indication of this at the event. I just liked her. We got on. It was great to have a friend who I got on with and had some stuff in common with to spend the day with. Serendipity is a fine thing. And serendipity is so valuable in networking because you never know who you're going to meet and where that relationship could take you. I had a similar situation at the 2019 conference I mentioned. But this time, the person I'd made friends with was someone I'd seen talk the previous year. And I'd contacted them because I really enjoyed their talk, and they worked somewhere fairly local to me. And it was an organisation I was interested in. We connected and we chatted digitally. We spoke on the phone, but we'd actually never met in person. So at the event, I approached them, introduced myself because we didn't actually know what each other looked like. He didn't know what I looked like. And we ended up talking at length and sharing ideas and really clicking. And they introduced me to other people. And before I knew it, I was networking like an expert. And then when I came back home, we met up for coffee and we talked about ideas and we came up with some plans. And it was so serendipitous. It was just chatting to somebody who I'd connected with previously. So my takeaway from this tip is to do networking your way. Be authentic to you. Whatever feels good for you, however it aligns to your values, do it that way. If you're naturally a social butterfly and you want to meet everyone in the room, just have a quick chat with everybody, that's great. That's great for you, and you should do that. But if you want to go and build deeper relationships with just one or two people, that's brilliant too. Building one strong relationship is better than being so daunted by the idea of working the room that you don't speak to anyone. And that one person could just be the person that holds a great opportunity for you in the future. And if they don't, you've made a friend. It's a win-win situation. And that's just recapping what I've said. I should learn all my clicks, shouldn't I? There we go. All right, next one. 3, prepare before the event. So this is really good for working out who you want to talk to and what to talk to them about. So that last example I gave previously, I contacted somebody that I'd seen at a previous conference, and then it transpired that at next year's conference. So I already had that relationship. And that's one of the difficulties I've always found in networking is knowing who's approachable. Who can I go and talk to? Would I have anything to talk to them about? choosing someone from random from the crowd and then wandering up to them felt so daunting. And I always felt like I was just reeling off a bit of an elevator pitch or making small talk about the weather. So to be fair, in the UK, at UK conferences, people love talking about the weather. We have a lot of weather, generally in one day. So weather is a very legitimate conversation point in the UK. At the conference in 2019, I already had those contacts I mentioned from 2018. I knew they'd be there. I was actively looking out for them. I contacted them on LinkedIn in advance and said, like, I'm going to be at the conference. I saw you last year. I want to grab a coffee. And it was great because I'd already got those solid interactions and conversations that I could build on. So take a look at attendee and speaker lists in advance. Join some online forums and groups relating to the event you're interested in. Or could reach out to people that you recognise from other events or you've seen talking online. Perhaps you've engaged in discussion on a forum or on LinkedIn. Reach out to those people ahead of the conference. Maybe suggested that at the conference you could have a chat over coffee in one of the networking breaks. Or if you prefer, just leave it open-ended. Come and say hi if I see you. You now have a contact and a genuine, authentic reason to connect with someone at the event. Also, during the event, speak to people at your table. So if you're all in a session where you're all sat around a round table, brilliant, you've got a ready-made setup there to start talking to people, and you already have something in common. You've chosen this session. Ask them why. Why did they come to this session over all the other stuff that's going on? See where it goes from there. You also then have a familiar face to approach during the networking break. Chances are conversation will unfold pretty naturally, especially if you have something in common like the networking breaks or you've been talking beforehand. But it's worth doing a little preparation before you go to the conference. Decide what you do want from the networking elements of an event. Do you just want to make some like-minded friends, or actually do you have a slightly more focused goal? So are you looking for a new job, perhaps, looking for a collaborator, a mentor, or just to share your ideas? It can help to have a goal in mind. And I said, I don't like using an elevator pitch, but sometimes if you're feeling like you'd like something just to formulate that opening conversation about, prepare a few bullet points, have a bit of an elevator pitch that you can open with, or you can drop in there. Sometimes people will ask you, what do you want from the session? Why are you here? So, that's something to really remember, is that people know you're networking. It's part of the conference is designed to encourage you to network. Back channel online. Okay, we're getting a couple of days into the conference now. Might be starting to feel a bit overwhelmed, a bit low on face-to-face energy. So most events have an X hashtag or a handle. Some might have an app or a LinkedIn group, and they're usually really active during the event with people live posting their thoughts and observations, taking photos, sharing their ideas. So these online platforms are a great way of engaging in real-time discussion with fellow delegates, but doing it quietly to yourself on your device and not actually having to have that face-to-face time. It's a really good way as well of catching up on the highlights of the sessions you might have missed. For those who are feeling quite shy, they can provide a really good means of networking. Or if you're a little bit low on that energy, brilliant way of just taking that step back, but still getting the networking benefit. It means you can still engage in the community. And in the spirit of number 3 above, discussing those ideas virtually might give you a connection that you're inspired to go and find that person and continue your discussion. Or it might be that you just start having that conversation on the platform, but then you can sort of say, we'll meet for a coffee another time, or we'll catch up after the conference. You're still networking. Just because you're not out there in the throes of the conference, you're still networking, even if it's online. And then on to number 5, strike a balance. Be kind to yourself. If you're feeling a bit frazzled after 2 days of conferencing, you might need a break. I'm fully converted to the benefits and value of networking. Can't say I love it. Can't say I'm fully in the love it camp yet, but I do believe there's a huge amount of value in doing at least some face-to-face networking at conferences and other such events. It can be tiring and it can be daunting, but my advice to those who tend to avoid it is just push yourself to try it, give it a go, intersperse it with those more digital channels, those digital platforms, but do get out there and meet people. If you do find networking energy draining, be aware of when you start to feel tired and you need some alone time. Though, do be honest with yourself whether you genuinely need to recharge, whether you're just avoiding it. I fall guilty of that. But be kind, listen to yourself, take a step back and have a break when you need it. You might find it useful to alternate how you're using the breaks. Maybe use one for some dedicated networking and then the next one for some recharge time. By day 3, you might want to do one break for face-to-face networking, one break for the digital stuff, and then one just have a little bit of time out, go outside, get some fresh air. There are also sometimes solo activities you can do. So things like those treasure hunts, scanning QR codes, quizzes and things like that. You're still part of the community, you're still getting involved, but maybe you're doing it on your own, so you've just got that little bit of step back time. So let's recap my top 5 tips. Number 1, make use of those interactive activities. Use them as a warm-up just to start getting around, talking to people, but with those ready-made subjects, those ready-made topics. Be authentic. Do networking your way, the way that works for you. And if that's finding a friend and just hanging out with them for the whole conference, then that's brilliant. That's all you need to do. Prepare before the event. Find some people you're interested in that have been talking about topics that are interesting to you or your topics of specialism. Reach out to them. Try and find them at the conference. Got a ready-made person there to already have that conversation with. And if you've started a dialogue online, you've started having a conversation online, all the better. You can continue that in person. Back channel online. Switch to digital networking, digital communities if you're starting to feel the overwhelm of face-to-face. And if it starts to get too much, be kind to yourself and strike the balance. I've got a number 6, which I thought of about 5 minutes before I came online tonight. Another approach might be to do a talk. So some of you might be going, whoa, I'm not standing up in front of however many hundreds of people are doing a talk. But sometimes it's a great way to be involved, but you're not actually in that sort of face-to-face networking, depending on what can cause you to feel overwhelmed. You're not trying to deal with multiple people at once. You're literally just on broadcast and then accepting questions at the end. So it can be a brilliant way of getting involved in a conference without and sort of getting your name out there and networking, but in a slightly more remote way. So just another thing to consider. It actually led me this year to doing a cover of Green Day's Basket Case with lyrics dedicated to business analysis. It's on LinkedIn, look it up. But things like that, where you're being part of it, but you're not sort of necessarily in the thick of it. I was really lucky. I found a great conference to boost my networking skills and confidence. The BA community, the business analysis community globally is so welcoming, so passionate, so driven and inquisitive. And that really, really helps when reaching out to new people. If you're feeling shy, you're feeling a little bit daunted by the process, remember that people are at the conference for this very reason. No one's going to think it's strange if you strike up a conversation. Nobody's going to think it's strange if you walk over to a group, however contrary or counter to normal society that feels. You probably wouldn't just wander up to some people in the street and start chatting to them. These are dedicated events that are designed for this. It took me ages to get my head around that. I believe there's no rule book for successful networking. It falls to the individual to find their own way and approach it in a way that works for them. But hopefully some of these tips will help you. Maybe you can adapt them. Maybe you can take away some things from them and try them out at the next conference you go to. For some people, this comes so easily. For others like me, it's shrouded in awkwardness and anxiety. And I believe that it's worth persevering. It's worth overcoming that and finding a way that you can do networking that works for you. So reach out, take the leap, make friends, make new connections. It can hugely, hugely increase the value you get from a conference and various events like this. It can lead to really good opportunities and experiences, even if it's just an invite to conference drinks at the pub next door. Just one final little plug. If you've enjoyed what I've been talking about today, hopefully you'll enjoy my book. It is on the BCS library. It's an exclusive on the library. You do have to be a member. And I do talk quite a bit around networking and how that can help you with your sort of job move or career moves and taking that next step. But that's all from me telling you things. I'm going to open the floor to ask me anything about conferences. Yeah, I'd love to answer some of your questions.
All right. So, if you've got questions for Rachel, you can put that into the Q&A box. And I've got the upvotes turned on. So if you also have that same question, give it an upvote. We'll take that in the order that you or the rank, whatever. I don't know. Words, they're hard. I've been talking since 8 o'clock this morning,
Oh my
Rachel.
gosh.
While we are waiting for some questions to come in, here. So Rachel and I have been kind of laughing about an error that I made, which sometimes happens. It's like a networking thing, right? So I learned a fun fact about Rachel that she's an improv actor and wanted to make sure that I promoted today's event. Except the person that I mentioned is a different Rachel. And so that Rachel very kindly said, "Not me. I know Rachel Drinkwater, but that isn't me." And so we kind of made a laugh, had a laugh over it. What I will say is, I'm now going to connect with that other Rachel because we had been connected on LinkedIn and I hadn't had an opportunity to do that. Also, Rachel Drinkwater and I weren't even connected on LinkedIn, which I think is what happened. So now Rachel Drinkwater and I are also going to have some additional chats. Lean into serendipity. That was your advice. And that has been my experience as well. The universe or somebody is putting you together. And even if it was an embarrassing thing, who cares? Have a laugh, but take it as an opportunity to connect with that person. So, all right, we have a question, Rachel. It is from Boomik. And Boomik says, what are some key do's and don'ts to keep in mind while approaching people for networking at events and conferences?
So, again, I think it would depend on the individual. Personally, the authenticity, I think, is a huge part of it. Be yourself. Be authentic about that relationship. I think it's okay to have in mind what your sort of goal from that is. It might just be to meet somebody. It might be that you specifically want to tell them about something you're doing or an idea you have. But authenticity, I think, is really, really important. I think the other thing is listen. Let the other person have some space in the conversation. Listen to what they've got to say. Listen to what they're doing. Again, that really lends to that serendipity because they might start talking about something that, hey, you're working on that as well, or you're looking for somebody to collaborate with that. So yeah, learn what you can from people. Let them have some airtime, and make it a really good conversation.
I'll add to that. It sometimes people don't necessarily want to connect. And the reason will have nothing to do with you as the person on the other end of that. It will have everything to do with them. And you might get that in their body language or whatever. Just move on. It's okay. If somebody is not interested in networking at that moment or connecting at that moment, you never know where you are meeting somebody. And I don't mean physical location, I mean like what's going on with them. It happens sometimes. So just be mindful that, sometimes people aren't ready to connect. Thanks,
Yeah,
Bumik.
absolutely. I think it
Yeah.
sort of goes back to that introversion thing as well. So the extroverts in the room, you might find somebody isn't feeling too open to talking. They might be like looking a little bit frazzled. And yeah, it's not that they don't want to be friends. It's just that they need a bit of reflection time. Absolutely guilty of that. Well, I'm even guilty of it. That's me at conferences. By day three, I'm like, guys, I'd love to chat with you, but I just need to go sit in that corner for a couple of minutes. Can I come and find you later? So yeah, so sometimes people aren't ready to connect. They're not able to connect to that particular point in time. Yeah, don't be daunted by that. Don't be phased by that.
Yep. Yep. All right. So our next question is from Thashin. How do you leave an interaction with one person in a nice way to meet another person? Oh, this happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's okay to be honest. So I it's been great chatting to you. Let's pick this up offline. I do want to go and meet a couple more people. There's somebody over there that I'd really do want to catch before they go off to the next talk. Anything like that. I think be open and honest. Obviously don't say, you're boring me to tears. I'm going over here to talk to someone else. But it's okay to sort of naturally round up that conversation and just say, I do need to go and chat to that person I've just spotted over there. Or, turn it back. It's like, I've monopolized a bit too much of your time. I'll let you get on. Great meeting you. Let's catch up offline. And so anything like that, just be honest about it. I think that's probably your best bet. Not too
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, but not too honest. Yeah. All right. Our next question is from Jiwa. How do you approach networking with people who are more senior or in leadership roles?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think it depends on the conference. So if it's sort of an open conference and you're there as a delegate, you're on an equal par. It doesn't matter if they're the CEO of somewhere, you're all there as delegates together and they're just a human being. So I'd say just approach them in the same way you would anyone else. If it's an internal conference at your place of work, that's a bit of a different matter because it can be a little more daunting. You might feel there's a little bit more riding on it. But the reason they're there is to be talked to. The reason they're there is to network with you. So I find internally, if I've got an internal conference, I do like to have a bit more of an elevator pitch. I like to have something that I'm specifically wanting to talk about. But yeah, at those big conferences, just remember everyone is a delegate. You're all on a level setting in that environment.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, especially if you know that you are going to have more senior folks at a conference, do some of your stakeholder analysis, right? We know that folks in leadership positions are generally focused at a higher level and, may have time constraints. So going in with just a simple approach, don't overwhelm them with too much detail, is probably a good approach.
I heard a really good suggestion once actually is if you're in an elevator for, 30 seconds going up to the top floor and you're sort of in there with the CEO doesn't want to know how you do things. They want to know what you're doing for the organization. And we can be I'm definitely guilty of this. I can get very down in the detail because I love what I do and I get excited about workshops. But my CEO probably isn't going to be very interested in what I do in my workshops. He's going to be interested in the outcomes and what I'm doing for the organization. So what you do, not how you do it.
Yeah, great point. Great point. All right. Our next question is from Scott Helmers, who just did a webinar with us yesterday. He says, I second your add-on tip number 6 about speaking at events. Wearing a speaker badge at an event causes people to approach you. I've talked with a number of speakers and authors who said sometimes they feel like the things that they have done kind of make people feel like they are off limits to talk to. But really, speakers at conferences, they want to talk to you. I mean, how do you think they come up with these great new ideas? Well, they want to talk to people that do it. So, speak to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my earlier conferences, I sort of looked at these people who are sort of celebrities, and it's like, no, I can't go and talk to that person. They're a speaker. They're special. It'd be like walking up to my favorite rock star or pop star. But absolutely, they're people. They're just people that are there to learn and to share ideas and collaborate. And the reason, I've now spoken at a few conferences, and the reason I speak is because I want to talk about my ideas. I want people to come up and go, I really loved what you said about X, Y, and Z. Can we talk some more on that? So yeah, absolutely. Talk to speakers. They expect it. They want to chat.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Nikita has our next question. How could we approach a coffee chat and make it effective for future opportunities?
I can read the question again, please.
How could we approach a coffee chat, whether it's virtual or in person, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of an informal conversation, and make it effective for future opportunities, which I'll assume is job opportunities?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think again, it's just being honest about why you're there and what you want. If your reason for networking is that targeted, that you're literally looking for a new position, don't be afraid to say so. It's like, I've come here today. I'm really looking for new opportunities. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do. Use it as a little mini interview. Yeah, I think that's probably the best bet. I'm a massive honesty is the best policy kind of person. I think just being direct and to the point generally yields best results.
Yeah, I think so, especially if that is your intent
Hmm.
in the connection that you're making is to look for opportunities. I think that needs to be part of the information you give when you are inviting someone to the coffee chat. I'm interested in talking with you about opportunities at your organization. Would love to have coffee with you. And you know what? If they say no or I'm not the right person, they're not the right person, right? Because it's not going to yield the result that you want. So again, honesty is the best policy there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So our next question, um, Abisoya, what is the value of business cards and networking today? Oh, this is good. A
Yeah.
new shift towards QR codes is happening in networking spaces. Should I keep making business cards or get with the times?
Yeah, it's tricky. I'm a massive stationery nerd. I absolutely love paper-based stuff. I've like my Kanban board for my day-to-day work is post-it notes stuck on a whiteboard. I love business cards because they're pretty and I feel really cool when I have them. Um, I'm a massive fan of business cards. I can't remember the last time I was asked for one. I carry them, but I'm always asked, "Are you on LinkedIn? I'll connect with you." Um, it's really hard because if you like them, why not give them to people? You're actually unique now. It's an interesting talking point if you hand out a business card. But honestly, at every conference I've been to for the last 5 years, I think it's very much LinkedIn these days. I'm very sadly in the non-business card camp, I'm afraid.
I also have business cards, but you know, I think it really is up to whomever you're going to connect with. Like, I like to have the business cards, and if somebody wants one, great, I have one. If they want to connect with
Mm.
me on LinkedIn, we can make that happen too. Um, you know, so
Yeah, I think
uh,
if you like having business cards, there's no harm. Because then that odd person that does say, "Oh, have you got a card? Brilliant, you've got one." I remember like when I first started going to conferences, like you'd sit down the table and somebody would like diligently hand out their business card to everyone on the table. I really do miss that. But yeah,
I
LinkedIn seems to be the place to go now.
I was at a user group conference a couple of months ago, and as I was going around, ooh, this is another good trick. If you wanna network, and so I'm at a conference with people that are business analysts but have no idea about IIBA or what we do or even who I am. And so as I'm in these rooms with people and I'm talking to them about business analysis, I would hand them a sticker that would say like it was a business analyst sticker and I would include my card with it and say, "Hey, you know, here you go. Here's a thing and, you know, here's more about me if you want to connect." So, have goodies. That sometimes helps to to smooth those connections. All right.
Absolutely.
So, Dee Dee has our next question. As you mentioned, connecting with someone online helps. So, can you share some tips to connect or network with someone through LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's worth being part of groups on LinkedIn. Quite often conferences have a forum or a group you can join. Um, Sometimes you'll reach out to somebody and they'll just blank you altogether because they're inundated with requests. So follow them at first. That can be a good approach. So follow them, get to know the things they're talking about, then send them a more targeted request. So I read your article on this and I'm really interested in it. I'd like to talk to you more. Or we work in the same field and I'd like to connect with you. Have a reason for connecting with them and send them a message. That's a good approach. On forums or groups, get into a conversation. So add comments, add to the discussion. You'll probably find people start coming to you. And again, sort of getting involved in your community. So doing talks like this, reaching out to people and seeing if you can join in a webinar or a panel. Most of my connections these days come from me doing events like this, and then people are like, "Oh, I'd like to follow you. I'd like to connect with you." And then people approach me at conferences and go, "I came to that really cool webinar you did, and I really enjoyed it, and I'd like to talk to you more." So just get involved, join the conversation, connect with the people that you're chatting with, and yeah, if you're just sort of cold contacting somebody, put a bit of context around why you'd like to connect to them.
Yeah, that's also a great point is to put some context in. There's an interesting comment over in chat and And I think let's talk about that for a second. So this this person is asking, how can you present yourself or network when you are not a business analyst, but you have the skills to transition? Maybe talk about networking around business analysis adjacent communities, if that's a thing.
Yeah. And I think it's such an interesting question because I think the business analysis role is so wide ranging. And so many roles have the business analysis skills, but not necessarily the title. And I think that is massively recognized in the community. So you would never be left out of conversations or dismissed just because you're not a business analyst. So that's the first thing I want to say. Don't let it put you off just because you're not a BA yet, or you're not working as a titled BA, but you're doing the job. Again, joining the conversation, show your credentials, show your experience, show your ideas. Nobody will ever shut you down just because you're not officially a business analyst. If you're not that familiar with the community, find out who those key players are, the people that are doing the talks. I've never been part of a profession where people are so willing to share, they're so willing to give free content. So yeah, look at who's publishing newsletters, look at who's publishing articles, look at who's contributing to webinars and forums and things like that, and then go and find those people and have a chat. They're so welcoming, so happy to have a conversation, and it will give you a good starting point to sort of start talking to people that are in the know and in the in crowd.
I have been a big fan of silent movies for decades. And I am now exploring and creating connections with academics and other writers who are in this space. And yeah, I'm using some of these techniques, what I've learned about networking, in order to just make some introductions, because who am I? I've never written a book on anything, so I just love them. And I am finding that um, referring to a blog that they've written or a question that I've asked or a conference that I see that they've attended and just kind of asking questions about that is a great way to start.
Absolutely. If people are sharing, they're passionate about their subject. So that's a brilliant in, isn't it? Have a chat with something someone's passionate about. Be interested, and
Yeah.
great things will follow.
All right. So our next question, how would you maintain contact with the people you meet at these conferences?
Yeah, for me, it's usually LinkedIn. So I can't say I'm brilliant at this, but other people are, fortunately. So usually I'll connect with someone on LinkedIn, and I normally get a lot of messages from people going, "Hey, we had a chat at LinkedIn at the conference, or I really enjoyed what we were talking about, or I saw you talk. Do you want to continue the dialogue? Do you want to meet for a coffee? Are you going to this event?" So yeah, use those opportunities to sort of that common ground. So we talked about this. Do you want to continue talking? Or I see you went to this event. Are you going to this one that's run by the same organization? Things like that. So just keep the dialogue going. Yeah, just lean into those conversations, build on those foundations that you've already developed. As I say, something I need to get better at, because I usually come back from a conference and I'm exhausted. I need a week off, and I feel like I've missed the boat a little bit. So, but luckily other people contact me. But yeah, that would be my advice: is lean into the conversation you've already had and use those foundations to build on where you could take it next.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody that you connect with at a conference is expecting you to have a recurring long-term conversation asynchronously through LinkedIn or some other platform. But just checking in, or if you've got questions, I know that that some folks connect with me maybe quarterly or every 6 months or so. Um, about things. And I think that's fine. Or you can have no conversation after that initial meetup. So it's just about kind of what kind of connection you want to maintain.
Yeah,
So our next,
absolutely.
yeah,
And yeah, sometimes there are people I only speak to at an annual conference. I see them every year. That's the only connection we have. We get on like a house on fire for 3 days, and then I don't see them again for a year, and it's absolutely fine. It's like those really good friends that you don't see for 10 years, and it's like you picked up like you saw them yesterday.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I know at BBC, I know that there's a crowd there that's when they connect. It's every
Hmm.
year at BBC. So, all
Yeah.
right. Our next question is from Orlando. Can you expand on some cultural networking etiquette? I mean, when you interact with people of other cultures or locations that are not similar to yours.
Yeah, and that can be a minefield, absolutely. If you're in the UK, talk about the weather. That's always a good start. um, yeah, do some research. I think that's probably a best bet, is just to understand some of those cultural differences. I haven't traveled that extensively. I'm mostly traveled in Europe and in the States, but obviously there are certain parts of the world where handshaking is not necessarily embraced. It's not something that people necessarily do. There are certain things that you could do which could actually be incredibly rude, or culturally inappropriate, and there's no reason you would know that. So I would just suggest, if you're going to a conference in a country you're not familiar with, do some research, find out what those faux pas possibly could be, and seek to avoid them.
And I am thinking about a podcast that we did last year at the end of the year called Working Across Cultures. And so many of my colleagues at IIBA work in different countries, and that was the focus of our conversations, or that was part of the conversations, was understanding how to talk with and work with people that are in different parts of the world. So we might include a link to that, maybe in a follow-up email, because that was a really, really helpful, right? And right from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, and it is it's a really difficult thing, and it's something that I grew up in a very small mining town in the middle of England, and didn't really get to meet people from different cultures. So when I sort of went away to university, it was a bit of a culture shock. I sort of really had to learn on my feet. So yeah, something a guide like a guide would have been very handy at that part of my career. But it's just a thing to find your way as you go. But we've got the beauty of the internet and extensive information now, so use it, look it up, find out what to do and what not to do.
Let's talk about that for a second, because there can be awkward moments and mistakes and things like that that happen as you are networking. And I feel like sometimes we think that is the worst possible thing that could happen. And oh my gosh, what are these folks going to think about me that I have made this terrible mistake? How do we
Mhm.
get ourselves out of that mindset? Maybe this is where you kind of dive into that improv background you have.
Yeah, it's I don't know if I have an answer to that. I've made mistakes. I've said things which I wouldn't say now. Let's put it that way. And it was purely through ignorance. It was purely through a lack of understanding or a lack of knowledge, and no malice was meant. Um, I've learned from it. I apologize. All you can do is accept you've made an error, and apologize, and learn from that, I think. And of course, in a networking environment as well, I think people recognize that it is a high pressure environment. It's a difficult environment for many people, and I think people are very accepting and understanding of if you do make a bit of an error.
Yeah, I think sometimes because our work is so international, one of those areas where we might feel embarrassed is in pronouncing names,
Mm.
because we work with folks from all over the world. I relish pronouncing names. It's maybe one of the things that I really like about the work that I do. And I really want to learn how to pronounce names, but I am also willing to know that sometimes I will not pronounce them correctly. And I try to, apologize, and I think most people understand. So yeah, so leaning into that, not feeling overly embarrassed. All right. So
Yeah, and I find certainly with the name thing, YouTube's brilliant. So I'll go to YouTube. How do I pronounce? And it literally gives me a video with a phonetic spelling and somebody reading it out. Brilliant. It's such an easy thing to do, and I think such a kind thing to do and an inclusive thing to do. And I think, yeah, it's such a simple way of improving cultural relationships.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so we have another question. We've got about 5 more minutes. You guys are asking fantastic questions. Yulina asked this question. I'm not an IIBA member yet, but I'm curious, what are the networking opportunities within the IIBA community? So let me ask you, Rachel, do you do stuff there in the UK? We've got a very active UK chapter. Are you involved with that? And what do
Yeah,
you
so
do?
at various varying levels over the years. So I was the blog strategy manager for a while.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, sort of every month we published an article on our blog. So I was sort of reaching out to various authors, getting content, having conversations with them. Absolutely amazing networking opportunity being a volunteer. I'm what part of the Midlands sort of Midlands volunteer adjacent at the moment because I've been very sort of busy with my book, but sort of stealing that term. It's brilliant, the adjacent. But yeah, just a part of the community, inputting where I can. Um, what else? There's the BA brown bag, so they're brilliant. Little networking drop-ins. They were every Friday lunchtime. I think we alternate now, so it's Friday lunchtime, Thursday evenings on alternative weeks. Absolutely amazing way of just meeting other BAs, having a conversation. Sometimes it's a targeted session and it's a specific subject, but a lot of the time it's just come and bring your problems and we'll have a good chat and see if we can fix them together.
When um when the pandemic started, so many of the chapters went online. So many of them have their own Zoom capabilities. And so that I think equalized a lot of things. You didn't have to be local to participate in events. But when you become an IIBA member, we find the local chapter to you so that you can meet in person or you can participate in their virtual events. If there is not a local chapter to you, really, as part of your IIBA membership, you get to be a member of any chapter. You can participate in any chapter's events. So if you are in um, Omaha, Nebraska, here in the US, and you really love the brown bag that the UK chapter does, or you love the BA cafe that the Belgium chapter does, you can participate in that. So there's lots of ways, lots of online opportunities where you can meet people, face to face, the new version of face to face. All right, so let's see. All right, Syed, you're going to be our last question. As someone with a background in business analysis, what advice do you have for taking my career to the next level, particularly in consultancy? So, and maybe this leans into your book a little bit. So, so I don't know. How do you want to answer that? And maybe how does networking play into that?
I think especially with consultancy, I think it really plays into it. I think growing that network, building up a client base. So I've always been an employed business analyst. I've never really done the freelance route. But I do think like having that strong client base, knowing other BAs that can sort of direct you towards work as well. So I mentioned the person I met at a conference and they sort of started passing on freelance writing work. Their rota was full. Basically, they couldn't take on any more work, so they started passing it on to me, and they became a really good source of work. So again, the BA community is very willing to share, very willing to pass on opportunities. So building that network of people maybe that are in a similar field to you, or have a completely different specialism to you, because then you're more likely to get things referred on to you. Build that reputation. I think doing conference talks, producing content, sharing your ideas, it shows your authenticity as a business analyst. It shows that you are operating at that higher, more senior level of business analysis. And it gives you some really strong credentials. Anybody who employs you will be looking at what you've been doing in the field. So it's great to have that content base.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as they
read my
say,
book.
content is king. And yeah, content is king and read your book. So, all right. And we are at the end of our time together, Rachel. So this has been great. I am excited that we met and looking forward to talking with you some more. Also, we want to thank everybody that has attended today. Boy, you've had lots of great questions.
It has been brilliant. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone for being so engaged. It can always be a bit of a one-way thing on on doing virtual talks, but I've just loved all the little emojis and icons that have been flashing up. So it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you all. Again, this is our last webinar of 2024. So we look forward to seeing all of you in 2025 at another webinar or a podcast. Um, Take care. Happy holidays. And we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone. Take
Yeah.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.